To all those who have joined us, hello and welcome to what is the fourth of our home claims webinar. And as you know, they're all in the series entitled Home Claims, Helping Each Other through the challenge. And today is going to be very much part of that, because we're going to look at the challenge of the well-being of our colleagues and friends throughout the industry. The first webinar we had was very general, you probably remember. Then we went on to look at some follow-ons from the floods in terms of alternative accommodation. And last week we moved on to building claims. We will be returning to that again next Friday at 11 o'clock. That's to follow up on that, and also as a bit of a preamble towards our building claims conference, which you know has been changed to July, and hopefully we'll be in a position to go ahead then, but we'll know near the time. So in our first webinar, Will Quibell of Legal in General did say we had to look at the well-being of staff who've been furloughed or working at home and its unusualness. And I guess today is about trying to ask some people to share some of their experience of what's happening within these specific organisations, all a little bit different. As we look at how our colleagues cope with it at home, from the ones I talk to, some like it, some really struggle with it, some have huge difficulties with it, for some very practical reasons. But the background is, we've just returned from 4 days off, albeit not travelling at Easter. We've come back into a 4th week of lockdown. There are some of us, not me, but there's some of us living with a vulnerable family. Perhaps just as bad, there are some of us not living with vulnerable family and working at different relatives elsewhere, and we're finding it difficult to work. We might be worried about the future. On the other hand, some people might be loving working at home and spending some time there and helping the garden if they're in furlough. But what we do know is that many of our colleagues will need support and help, and some smaller businesses, there are many of them in the supply chain, may not be clear on how best they can help the people, what to do, where's the resource they can find to do it. So hopefully today we'll begin to throw some ideas on how perhaps they can help. And I'll be interested afterwards if people think we can use some of our contacts in order to put webinars on that will just motivate or help support some of the people that are working from home. You know, people that are normally in the call centre of the claims force. So please let me know at alan@ilove.claims if that's the case. So today we have, and I'll let them introduce themselves when they answer the questions, Mike Mayer from LV, Rob Chilcott from the Claims Consortium Group, and Kate McKenzie from Courtesy Kitchens and Bathrooms. So we've got somebody from an insurer who's trying to help deal with how their colleagues are working. We've got somebody from a supplier who's trying to do it. And we've got somebody who runs with a partner a very small business which supplies throughout the country, is in lockdown at home with her family and having to do all the things that run a business, talk to clients, be a teacher, and generally everything else. So we're going to try and get a full view of what happens. So I guess first of all, but secondly, you can also ask questions. There is an ability to ask questions or have a chat or anything you want to do after that. Just email me at alan@iloveclaims.com. So let me start. I think we'll start with Mike. How are you and your teams dealing with the situation, and what kind of variation of views are you getting from them?
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Mike Mayer. I'm a best practice manager at LV, and I've been in that role now for about 6 months, but the role never started as a virtual best practice manager. So I've had to, as I'm sure most of us have, adjust our skill set quite quickly for this new world that we find ourselves in. We look after a department of around 250 frontline staff, and about 3 weeks ago now we mobilised at the kind of start of the home working. So it's been a journey. I'm sure there's many people on here today that have been through a very similar journey. The overall mood, I have to say, because I've got friends and colleagues in other areas as well, I feel that we've moved quite quickly, and I feel that we've been quite successful, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, as we go through the questions, because we've been really on it when it comes to communication, and in particular communication that you wouldn't normally see in the workplace. So things like WhatsApp and obviously Zoom now, which is very popular, but we've moved in a way which you would typically not move in, I think, for a typical corporate, and I think that's been our real advantage here. So I can talk a bit more about that, but the general mood has been one of positivity. People have been very grateful that we've kept them informed so much. And again, we'll delve into that, I'm sure, in more detail.
Okay. Rob, what about you? How are your teams dealing with it? And what kind of variation of views are you getting from those that are perhaps more far-flung now?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Rob Chilcott. I'm the L&D manager for Claims Consortium Group, and I've had a leadership coaching with the company and beyond it as well. Similar to Mike, we had to mobilise fairly fast. 300 people suddenly working from home was a logistical challenge in a lot of ways, and everyone takes it in their own way. The variances of the people make it a more interesting challenge to mobilise a workforce in that way. The biggest push for us at the start was the logistical challenge and communication, and then setting up everyone in their new routines, because this is a new way of living, it's a new way of working, and it's been interesting, it's been fun, and it certainly has been a challenge, and it's taken people a different length of time to come to terms with different routines and different patterns and what it looks and feels like. It's been a very interesting time for us, but there's a lot coming out of it, which I say I'm sure we'll go into, that off the back of this moving forward, it won't go back to whatever normal might have been. It might not be that moving forward. There's a lot of things we found, and like Mike touched on, a lot of the electronic comms and Zooms and things that you can use, that moving forward, we will just do things in that way because it's just better. We were forced into it. The hand was forced a little bit, but a lot of good things have come out of it.
Thanks, Rob. Kate, how's it gone for you? It's a different size business. It's a growing business, very customer driven. But you're running it while you're trying to deal with the office and get the orders right and send people to the right places and educate your child. So how are you finding it from your perspective?
Thanks, Alan. Hi, so I'm Kate McKenzie. I'm one of the owners of Courtesy Kitchens and Bathrooms. It's myself and my partner. We run it together. We've been active for sort of three, nearly 4 years now. But yeah, we cover the UK. So it's very much here, there and everywhere. I'm pretty much the main admin person. So for me, it wasn't necessarily lockdown that made a huge impact. It was actually before that when they shut the schools, because then naturally then my daughter's with me. So I kind of went into lockdown about a week before everyone else. And it's been a challenge, very much so, on a multitude of levels, not only from a business front, but obviously making sure that my daughter's okay. Like you say, I'm all of a sudden a teacher now. I'm also pretty much her only friend because she hasn't got social life. So balancing all of that has been quite a challenge, and getting it right. I feel that we're there now. Routine was just massively disrupted to start off with. In terms of the business, thankfully we're quite a small, close-knit team anyway, so not much changed in terms of how we communicate to our staff, but we have had to make them and be aware that our primary role is to visit other people's houses, and whilst we've taken steps to minimise any sort of time spent in a customer's house, there is still that risk there. So we've had the issues of PPE and whatnot. But you have to be aware that your staff might not be comfortable with doing that. And we have to balance that as well. We give them the choice. If they don't feel comfortable going somewhere, even if they get there and they decide that they've changed their mind, they're not comfortable with that situation, then we just have to deal with it. So it's understanding that really, and just being sympathetic to the situation. Same with the clients as well. We need to listen to them and be very clear with them about what we need to do. So yeah, it's just we're very, I feel that we're very strong communicators anyway as a business, but we've just had to up our game a little bit.
And I'm sure, I would think certainly high hundreds and certainly into thousands of people who are in that same position at home and all of a sudden finding themselves, yes, as the educator and two as the friend of the children, because there's nowhere else to go. So we've got a lot of colleagues in that one. Coming back to you, Mike, then, how are you helping? How are you supporting them? And how's that changing? How's that evolving as you go through the process?
Yeah, so we started very, very heavy with our communication at the start. So an example of that would be 3 times a day, we were touching base with the team managers in a teleconference. And then 2 more times, my team and the head of, we would meet and have those conversations as well. So there was 5 touch points every day. We've scaled that back slightly now. And then on top of that as well, we were having teleconferences with those that had laptops and were working from home. but also there was a percentage of our people that we were still waiting to receive a laptop. So they're in a very different position because they're at home, they want to work, but they don't necessarily have the tools straight away to do that. So we were then having separate conversations with those guys. And then sitting on top of all of that, we've then had the WhatsApp group. And I didn't know WhatsApp could hold 250 people, but apparently it does, and it does it really well. And that group, again, I kind of hinted at this previously, that's been something that's allowed us to kind of get comms out very, very quickly, regardless of you having a work laptop or not. It means we can reach you, and we can do some fun things on there as well. So we had an Easter pub quiz last week. We've sent out, the top apps that people can log on to for Headspace, or, really useful YouTube channels that do yoga or mindfulness. And we're able to get those things out to the guys. And the good thing about WhatsApp, you may not know, is you've got different settings. So what we've done for the big group is we have set it in a kind of admin status. So that means that there's a list of managers that can put messages out there, but it's not a kind of free for all where suddenly you've got 250 people commenting on things. And that's been really useful because it means that the key things go out, but people don't get bombarded. And then we've got separate WhatsApp groups for team managers and service delivery managers. So that's the way it started. The way it's evolving, it's a good question, because I think we're still working through that right now. It's trying to get that balance right between giving people enough, but not too much, but not too little information. And I think we're striking a good balance there, because we're really trying to make sure that we have those regular touch points with the front line, and we have a log of those touch points as well, because we're really keen that nobody gets missed out. So we're able to kind of track and evidence that everybody's having at least one-to-one each week with their line manager, where they're just talking about a number of things. It might be work related, it might not be. I think the challenge that it's easy to forget is when you're in the office, you can just go up to somebody and have a bit of a nitter-natter about anything you want. Whereas now you have to make that effort. So I think some of our people found it a little bit bizarre when they had the phone call going, how's it going? What are you up to? Oh, you don't want to talk about work? No, I'm just checking how you're doing. So we've gone through that kind of adjustment, and it is an ever-evolving piece, but there's some of the things that we're doing currently.
That sounds great, Mike, and it's the concentration in making sure that contact remains there. And I guess that's probably difficult for a number of companies. Rob, how are you helping and supporting your team, and how are you finding that's evolving?
Yeah, in a similar way. So once the team had done the amazing job of getting all the guys suddenly working from home and setting up all the IT kit and the comms, the biggest challenge initially was the death by email approach of there's then so many comms kicking around and you don't have the natural conversations that you would have before. The human need of connection goes. I'm a big believer in a business context that leaders tend to work on a 70-30 ratio. So in business as usual times, normally 70% of the week, I've got something to do or some output to create in my role. And then 30% I lead the team. That tends to be how business is set up. In these times, it almost flips on its head. And the majority of the time is then spent looking after the team. And as Mike touched on, what would be a 5 or 10 minute conversation in the office becomes a 30, 45 minute call over FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, or telephone call. The effort is needed to step up a notch. And also from the people. I do a lot of work with engagement in Claims Consulting Group and with other companies. And there's only so far a company can go to engage people. The people need to push back the other way and want to be engaged and want to take advantage of it. It's been an amazing time. It's very altruistic, philanthropic, depending on how you want to phrase it. There's a lot of content available for free from a lot of people, from a health side, from mental health side, from all sorts of different avenues, which has been brilliant. So many webinars and YouTube channels being created, which is fantastic. But you've got to want to take advantage of it. And sometimes from a leader's point of view, it's helping people into the right frame of mind to say, actually, I will spend some time watching a webinar because I think I'll find it useful, or I can just pull the curtains and sit in the lounge and think about all the things I haven't got. So it's helping people to help themselves has largely been the challenge of weeks 2 and 3 of this, especially as we've moved into understanding that the energy level is different on a lot of different roles, and the work on both sides needs to work together to actually create something that's workable and actually enjoyable as much as we can.
I might come back in something with that later, because I think that was a very interesting point you were making. Kate, I mean, we've talked about how we keep other people going and how we keep in contact. With all the hard work you've got to do, how do I'm interested in how you keep the rest of your business going, but in the position you are just now, how do you keep yourself going? So you've got your family to look after, which a lot of our colleagues have. Let's be honest, a lot of our colleagues have to look after them, educate them, keep them amused, keep them happy. but you've also got customers calling, clients calling you, all of whom are going to be in various states of mind just now, and you've got some alarmed policyholders who are trying to look for peace of mind and stuff like that. So how are you looking after yourself to make sure you're in the right state of mind to deal with all of that?
It's hard, and I have been through the motions. It's been very up and down. However, it's routine, and it's finding the new normal. And it's like Rob was saying there, with getting yourself into the right mindset, because even myself, and I feel like I'm quite well learned in terms of working from home from years ago. I used to do that in a separate business. And it's simple little things that you have to do to keep yourself going. And I'd completely forgotten them. And then I think it was the middle of last week, I found myself sitting there in my pajamas with my laptop and wondering why I didn't feel very good about myself and I wasn't getting anything done. So it's at that moment, you do need to still get up in the morning and make yourself whatever you would do in the usual morning in terms of getting dressed or putting your perfume or aftershave on or your makeup. Those simple steps really set you up for the day, and it's a great novelty to be able to sit on your sofa with your laptop and think, oh, this working from home malarkey is great, but in the long term that's actually not really going to do anything for your mental health. Getting outside, making sure you do your exercise. And it's funny because before all of this lockdown and Boris announcing that we still were allowed out for exercise, I never really sort of, I'll completely admit I'm not like a gym freak or anything, I think that's quite obvious, but I didn't realise the benefits really of just going outside and having a walk. So you need to make sure that you're doing that each day as well, and really just finding a routine. I think the first few weeks, and I'm sure everyone else will probably see this within their teams and their own personal selves, the first few weeks it is very up and down and you're not really sure, and you're sort of going back and forth and thinking, oh, that didn't work for me today, or today was a successful day, what did work for me? And you just need to be a little bit more flexible and less pressure on yourself, I think, really, to just understand that no one is used to being in this situation. It's not normal. So we can only do the best that we can with what we've got. And as long as we're trying each day, if you might not be as productive as you were sitting in the office 4 weeks ago, but as long as you're trying and taking those steps and just assess it throughout the day, really, and as the days go on, and find the new normal that works for you.
Mike, I'm looking at, there's two kind of things here. I'm looking at the kind of balance between positive people and people who are struggling, and how much one can help the other. But the other one, with the people that are struggling, again, I feel how much it is to struggling to working at home against, and probably perhaps struggling with the whole situation that is unrealistic that they're living around, because they're quite different aspects to deal with. And how do you really find out what somebody's issues are?
Yeah, so very early on, we kind of advised the team managers, it's really important to hear somebody's voice. And if you can do a video conference at least once a week, because there's so many of those non-verbal communications we're going to miss if we are just having an email or a text chat with people. So we really made sure that was an important thing, that we laid down the reasons why, because you might just hear something, or somebody might say a certain sentence that might make you think, oh, I need to delve deeper here. All of our team managers are mental health first aid trained as well, so they're able to kind of spot potential signs where there might be issues. And we also identified quite early on, as this COVID was unraveling in the world, we kind of already highlighted which people potentially were more at higher risk based on kind of previous knowledge of those individuals. So you're never going to catch everything, but we had that list ready. So we made sure that those people that, for example, lived at home, that were going to be isolated, we prioritize them to have a work laptop, for example, so they had something to do straight away. We make sure we touch point with those people. The other thing we've offered them is independent coaching. So myself and a few others are coaches and have done coaching roles in the past. So I said, you know what, you don't have to just talk to your team manager. We're here to support you as well. If you just want to have a chat, or actually you want to talk about your career, because actually now we've suddenly got all this additional time. So if you want to spend some time working on yourself, what a better time than to do that now? personally, I've held about 10 or 12 sessions over the last week and a half, where I've been having these one-to-ones with people on the front line, talking about their career, talking about their well-being, and just really, doing the kind of the role of a coach. And that's been really nice to get that feedback, because I know we've not really done a lot of this in the past. It's been really nice to have that dedicated time just to talk to somebody I don't really know necessarily that well. I've been in the role sort of 6 months. So it's nice to be able to add the value in that space. But I guess in summary, it's verbal communication, it's trying to see people, it's trying to keep them connected. We're running a photo competition this weekend. So saying, when you get your hour of exercise time, go out there and snap something. And the more creative, the better. And we're going to put a little montage together, and we'll put that on WhatsApp and on YouTube or something when it's all done. But it's just these little things where we try and get people to kind of see each other and see what it looks like, because we may all feel isolated in our own homes, but actually there is that community there as well, because we're all doing the same sort of thing.
I'd like to come back later and talk about the team leaders and how they have to be supported in supporting something else. Rob, back to you. Yeah, what is the positive negative balance? And I'd like to go back just in your last answer as well, while you're dealing with that. You talked about, people, responsibility of people to help themselves. But of course, if you're looking after a company your size, you can have customer service people who are outgoing and easy to talk, and for them talking on the phone isn't. But there are other people very valuable in organizations like that who work by themselves, who work with the computer, who do a great job, but for whom communicating with somebody else is perhaps not as open and easy as it is for many of us. So how do you sort of really get them to engage with you?
Yeah, exactly right. It's not a one-size-fits-all exercise. So everybody, especially now, will want different things. And we say to leaders, when you're talking to your people and asking what they want, the answer is yes. Now, what's your question? Because help and support will look like whatever it needs to look like for any individual, because everyone's circumstances are slightly different. Some people might be on their own and wanting more contact. Some people might want a bit more space because they've got a family and things around, and everyone's slightly different. The difference between positive and not positive doesn't really exist in that sort of sentence framework. A lot of it is around, anyone who's heard me talk before will know that how you think drives how you feel, and how you feel drives how you behave. So a lot of the time it's the stories we're telling ourselves. So if we're saying, I hate being cooped up in the house, I can't cope with this, that's not a really helpful story. We don't know when it's going to end. We can come to the realization and say, actually, I'm looking forward to a time where I can get back out and see family and friends again. That's a more helpful thing to tell myself, because it just helps me feel a bit more contented and a bit more at ease with it, because there's so much stuff outside of our control right now. A lot of the coaching conversations I'm having at the moment are based on anxieties of things that either haven't happened, won't happen, might happen in the future. And sometimes it's just telling ourselves a slightly different story will actually help us calm our minds down a little bit and help us bring ourselves back to some reality. And when we feel better, often people will say a feeling is normally based on the thought of something rather than the actual thing itself. And we can stay quite contented in our time if we can just tame our thoughts a little bit, because definitely when you're sat at home and weekends feel like the weekdays and evenings don't feel any different, there's a lot of thoughts ticking around that don't often help us. So helpful thoughts and better stories has definitely been a mantra of my coaching for the last couple of weeks, of asking yourself, is that a reality, or is it just a story that we could actually change and become a bit more helpful?
Kate, as somebody who runs a smaller business, is this sort of stuff that we're hearing from Mike and Rob, is this the sort of stuff that you think a lot of fellow suppliers who perhaps don't have as good a corporate engine behind them as that could benefit from talking to and listening to give them ideas of how they can deal with both the staff, and let's not forget policyholders who have been through exactly the same journey as the rest of us? Is there room for sharing more of this and helping the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what people will need to remember, though, that it's as much as we can talk about all the different ways that we're interacting with people, and they're amazing, but it is just that, it's interacting with people. And I think for me, if anything, this is highlighting the importance of human interaction with everyone. We get so caught up with sitting at our desks behind the computer screen, and it's numbers and actions and figures and data, and you forget really actually that the workspace is your second family. They are people that you spend day in, day out with, that you share moments with, you share stories with, you grow with them, you learn with them. And that's just been taken away in the blink of an eye. And people, they're either like myself and stuck at home with screaming child and annoying husband, or they're stuck at home completely isolated, which I am grateful that I've at least got 2 annoying people here. But it's, I think if anything that we can take out of this as just human beings, whether it's business, insurer, wherever you are, corporate or not, it's just the importance of having that human connection and actually speaking to people. And like Mike was saying, it's not email. Email is just words and a computer script, essentially. It's having that verbal conversation with somebody and seeing something that's going to benefit everyone out of this. And you don't necessarily need to, don't get me wrong, they are very, very useful tools, but you don't need necessarily the fancy, expensive, pay loads of money to get all the equipment and teachers and trainers to do what essentially is needing to be done. It's just picking up the phone and checking in with people.
Thanks. I guess, Mike, that's probably never more true than now how we must deal with the policyholders, because that's not going to be as easy electronically. But then again, in looking at the welfare of our policyholders, how challenging is it for our people dealing with policyholders who have got the same challenges, concerns and worries as them just now? So are people getting extra training to deal with the situation, and the policyholders who are worried about whether they should proceed with having the claim resolved or not proceed, or the risk of bringing somebody in?
Yeah, so for us, we monitor the reasons why our customers are calling, and we're very close to that to see kind of what the changes are, especially during this period. And any particular things that kind of come out of the norm, we're having those conversations to discuss what's the best response to that. And I think it's just being sensitive. I think the thing that I've heard a lot is people are very grateful that there's somebody picking up the phone as well, and they just want to have a bit of a chat. And we've seen that actually, not necessarily the tone, but the way that people come across is just one of gratitude, that they're just happy that there's somebody there. I heard a story in the news today about somebody, and they answered the phone and the kid was in the background. This wasn't our company, but another one. And they were having a bit of a laugh about the kid, but they were saying, thank you for working. And we've had similar stories to that as well. Mm-hmm. But in terms of any particular challenges, if it's financially related or anything else, we're having those conversations at a much higher level to work out. We're being as supportive as we can for those guys.
Mm. Rob, we were talking with Kate there about how we can help other businesses in it. I know you've got a website coming up where you're actually going to try and get other people from within the industry to input to this website, so as almost the whole industry can contribute to trying to help with ideas, because we'll need lots of them, with ideas to help the colleagues and smaller businesses who need the help.
Yeah, exactly. So it should be going live next week. Fingers crossed. We're working on content now and working on the creation of it. So apologies, as I said in the out of turn, I think Jeremy's on the call somewhere. So apologies if the timing is wrong, but it's our way of trying to bring a community together. So the insurance community, be them suppliers, insurance companies, competitors, anybody. It's a time to come together and, as Kate said, working harder at the human relationships. Every time you lose line of sight in a relationship, you have to work slightly harder to make it work, be it personal, be it business. And we've got a ton of line of sight that's not there at the moment. So it's our way of reaching out and sharing some things that have worked for us, some of the things that we use, but also bringing it for other people to say it may benefit you, it may help, because we're losing some basic connections, a basic human need that we've all now lost, or we're all finding different ways to satisfy it, because suddenly we got put into a world, as Kate mentioned, where the normal routes of connection just don't exist anymore. So it's trying to find ways to share best practice, to bring things to life. And I say it's probably one of the best things that's come out of it from my world's point of view has been the amount of information that's now just amazingly visible and open to share, and anybody can use it and anybody can benefit from it. So yeah, bringing the community together, it will be completely free. So you're just free to register, no barriers to that. And then looking to bring a forum type content together where people can share, make comments, best practice. We'll share some videos, share some links of things that might help, and throw it open for not only our people, but the community in general, for anybody who feels they'll benefit from it.
Hey, do you think there's a benefit in organisations like ILC or others, but just, putting people in contact with people, or just saying, look, we're going to run a webinar. It might not be over connected with us, but here's somebody who can give hints and good advice and things that might help people through this situation. Is that the sort of thing we businesses like yours would appreciate?
Absolutely. I think everyone's different. They access information differently. They take it in, they absorb it. Some might like a WhatsApp chat, some might like to watch a webinar like this on their own. So I think the more resources that we've got available and the more different types of media that we've got and the formats and how to access that, you're going to appeal to more people. And I think we all know the importance at the moment of keeping everyone mentally active, I guess, for want of a better phrase. I mean, you've got, for example, like myself or other parents, going to work was almost like their breakaway from all their identity. At home, they're just mum, dad, parent. They scoot around with the Hoover and do the washing and pick up dirty socks. But going to work was their thing for them, their alone time, their career, everything. And it's all been squished into one now. So I think giving people resources where they can keep their mind active, where they maybe can distract from things going on the news, or have an hour to themselves where child's on YouTube and they can catch up with a webinar like this. I think the more resources that we've got available, the better.
Right. Mike, you talked earlier on about the good work your team leaders were doing and preparing them to talk to the teams. Who's behind the team leaders? Because they've got the same worries and then they're having to deal with perhaps some emotional output from some of the teams. So what kind of support are you giving them?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of this stems from top up. So the head of Stefan has been absolutely fantastic and has really led the kind of cultural shift in terms of communication here. So as I said earlier, we all touch base in the mornings, my level and working with Stefan, and then we have a conference with all the team managers. On top of that, they're having their one-to-ones with their leader of leaders, and then I'm offering leadership, coaching, development support with them as well. So I'm dipping in and out of kind of 1 hour sessions with them at the moment. Again, it's that independent voice. It's somebody that can go in there and go, how's it going? How's things going with your manager? How's things going with your team? And I can kind of pull that lever of being that kind of independent voice to support them. And they have their own conversations. And again, I come back to kind of the WhatsApp kind of approach as well, especially over things like Easter. There's this group, and it was originally set up just for the team managers, just to kind of share, kind of any bits that they needed quite urgent action on. But you can really see how that group have kind of bonded together even more than they were before. And over Easter, they're sharing pictures of the eggs and they're talking about things that are going on. And then that translates, I think, to the actual working week, where they're really supportive of each other. If somebody can't do something, the person's straight in there to offer and, make sure that they're kind of helping them. So again, I'll keep going back to the same thing. It's been communication, it's been sharing, it's been working out what's the best platform. And bit we haven't really spoke about too much here is, dealing with the introvert and extrovert kind of things as well. So some of those extroverts, they really enjoy the kind of Zoom chat version. The introverts are really benefiting from those kind of one-on-one telephone conversations. And it's just all being cognizant of those things and kind of adapting as much as we can to those guys.
A couple of comments that have come through the various channels we've got here. Rob, Simon James, I think says quite logically, the legacy of how leaders and organisations support their people throughout this crisis will last so much longer than the crisis itself does for most people. We probably agree with that. So how are we going to prepare people? This comes from another question from Pat. How are we going to prepare people when this finishes to go back to where they were before, or as near to where they were before as we will go back?
It's depending on where you want to go back to. I heard I was part of a very interesting conversation last week where you could even view this without being too grand a scale as the Industrial Revolution in reverse. That put us all together in workplaces and that set our tone of how offices looked. So we were, if you like, monkey see, monkey do from the armed forces back in the day of saying this is how offices look, big call centers or big offices with a pyramid structure. This has changed it. It's thrown people further apart. So there are plenty of businesses who won't go back to what they had before because actually there's a better way of working that could end up with location independent working from home, or saving rent on buildings. There's tons of things that people could do. So it depends on whether you're hell bent on going back to where you were before and saying it worked for us, I'll go back to it, or how open you can be to say there are some things that work. There's probably a middle ground somewhere where I can move back into an aspect of it, but it's been really interesting because there's elements of this that's really working for us, and a lot of the metrics you would run success by. In terms of the output of a business, in terms of engagement levels of people and how people are enjoying it, like Mike said, there's plenty of people enjoying this. If you ask people now, we were asked whether we do an engagement survey on how people are feeling, but with lockdown, you'll get the answer based on lockdown, not on working from home and what that experience is like. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and say if when we move into a world where the lockdown finishes, if we carry on working, how people enjoy the experience then could be quite interesting how we shape it. So there's no real hard and fast to say you have to go back. We're pattern monkeys, essentially human beings. And with a pattern, like any kind of routine, you either find a pattern or routine that works for you, or a routine or pattern will find you. And a lot of people who have let's say a bad habit, it's because of the routine they're set into that they can't break. It's working quite hard to break routine. So for a lot of leaders, a lot of senior leaders, there'll be an element of, it will feel uncomfortable to change a pattern of what we've done for hundreds of years in business, essentially. And it'll be interesting to see how people come out the end of it and how forward thinking some people can be and how open-minded we can be to say, this is the world we now want to create, because it has created a completely different set of patterns and world for us.
That's indeed. Kate, from a practical perspective, if we were to introduce some people to help those that are working at home through it and give them some structure which might help the industry, what sort of thing do you think would be helpful? What sort of areas of advice would you find most useful?
That's a very vast question. I think it's motivation. I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? Because I say motivation, I don't actually really like the theory of motivation, but it's continuing and knowing that it will get there. Things will change to how they need to be. So I think it really is a mindset thing, really, and everything else can be dealt with as long as your mindset is in the right place. So for me, that is the most important. Going back to the first question, it's about getting up every day. It's about presenting yourself. It's about being ready and doing the things that need to be done. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the same, because this is a completely different situation and it is going to take time for people to adjust. Some people will adjust quickly and others won't. But I think that needs to be the core of what everyone is looking at in terms of if you're running a business or if you've got employees, and on a personal note as well. I think that for me would be definitely the key object.
Mike, do you think there's a big advantage in getting everybody that we can who are running business to do this, to share their experiences, so if there's something we can learn from each other, we can take it away? Because the industry has often worked, I've said this before, the industry frequently works without collaboration, and in some places that might be a good idea, but at the moment, whatever it is, the better collaboration we can have in sharing how our people are coping with this, surely the better.
Yeah, I think it was on the news, I heard someone talking, I think it was Boris Johnson actually saying that he'd been in contact with all of the supermarkets. And I think that's quite evident, actually. You kind of see that there's a way that they've set themselves up now, which shows a level of kind of working together and consistency. And I know there's obviously competition rules and the way that we set ourselves up, but there's definitely elements of best practice here I think we would all benefit from sharing with each other, because it can only help. And going back to kind of Rob's point as well around, I really like that, the Industrial Revolution in reverse. I think that to me is really exciting, because suddenly it's no longer location dependent, and actually you've got all these great skills across the country, and suddenly that door could be unlocked now, that we can be recruiting people from different places we never would have got to before, and vice versa. So I think it just opens us all up. So absolutely, I would encourage anything we can do that doesn't break competition rules, that allows us to share best practice. We should all be doing that.
And do you think if we can get various people to just put on a webinar that says here's half an hour, we're going to give you some hints that the people you've got working from home would benefit from that?
Absolutely. I think there's all these people that are doing their own individual things. Just because we're doing the things we're doing and we're talking about it doesn't mean that that's the absolute best way of doing it. And I'm very open and receptive to seeing what other people are doing. I would love to learn from those things as well, as I'm sure my team would.
Okay. Rob, I guess final word from you. What's going to happen over the next few weeks? I'm not watching news, but I'm expecting a further 3-week lockup to appear. And what impact do you think that's going to have on people and the work that you're going to have to do to keep them going, keep them communicate with everybody and keep everybody in the right frame of mind?
The energy put into, because we don't know the date it ends. That's the biggest hurdle for people, because we just don't know. It could be 3 weeks and then another 3 weeks and another 3 weeks. We have no idea. So it's working to try and find that area of mindfulness we can get into to say, actually, all I can do is control what's in my power to do. And I'd like to look back on my time in this period of lockdown and think, I did something good. I was quite proud of what I did, or I achieved something, or the way in which I conducted my business I'm quite proud of. And it's helping people get into that space of the other bits we can't control. The spread of a pandemic is beyond anybody's control right now. And all we can do is take the actions to help in whatever way we can, and then to find a way to be at peace with it and be okay with it. But it's really hard. And I've not met a person who's got this down to the point where they don't need help at some point themselves. So it's helping people to think back to what's in my sphere of influence, what stories can I tell myself that's helpful? And when I look back on this, because it will end at some point, what do I want to look back on with? Or what kind of feeling do I want to have when I look back on my time? That's where a lot of energy is being spent right now.
Kate, just as a last word from you, what kind of energy are you feeling in terms of the way you're dealing with your policyholders? Mike talked about them being very understanding, but they must be unsure and understand. You're having to deliver or lift things off or talk to them about stuff. What's their moment? Generally they're the same. They're grateful, actually, that people are still out there doing the things that need to be done, especially when we're delivering, because obviously they're in desperate need. So yeah, people have generally been quite open. They understand what we need to do. We obviously explain to them where we need to access and whatnot, and make sure that they're comfortable with it. And we absolutely wouldn't go ahead if they weren't 100% happy, because it's just not worth it, is it? So yeah, it's generally it's been okay. So it's the volume is different. It definitely has decreased, but like we discussed, you guys discussed on the last one, I think that's a lot of people holding back because it's not urgent. They don't necessarily, like, for example, if it was me and it wasn't urgent, I wouldn't want others to put themselves at risk for me making a claim anyway. So that's completely understandable. But the ones that we have spoken to, it's all been really well received. I think most people in general are in quite good spirits, and we're just dealing with it as it comes. Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, thanks to you all. I would say that I think any collaboration in this helps us all. So anybody who wants to email me at iloveclaims.com, if you're an insurer and your own ways of dealing with this, or any hints, if you're a supplier, we'd love to know. I'm sure Mike would love to know. I can put you in contact with him. I'm sure Rob would love to know as well, and they can open a website which will allow you to input it. If there is an appetite out there for a platform which will help get some good information to your people, then please let us know. We will do everything we can. We've got some good contacts from Live Big and lots of other organisations that can help. We really like to do it, so please let me know. It's a very serious issue. Thanks to all three of you. Next week we're going on Friday. It'll be Friday 24th. It's 11 o'clock and it's a return to the building claims. Two things here. Some big aspects come up last week about suppliers and their ability to be in shape for the restart. And we're hoping to show some progress in that. And also as a preamp to the I Love Claims Building Conference, which is in July, and we're going to hope that that one goes ahead. It's one of our mini conferences and it's pretty booked out, so we're really looking forward to that. Other than that, thanks again to everybody. Please follow the advice. I say this every week. Stay safe, help your colleagues, help your clients, help your suppliers, help everybody wherever you can. not just within our industry. We are in claims and everywhere else in this together. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much to Kate, to Rob, and to Mike. If you get any questions for them, either go to them direct or please just contact me. I'll be delighted to help. Thank you very much. And as again, stay safe.